I've alluded a couple of times during this course to the idea that business analysis is both an art and a science. Gathering requirements from stakeholders is probably 80% art and 20% science. What this means to me is that you can't really learn it from a book. You can't even really learn it fully from a course. Nonetheless, what we're going to cover is a very important part of the course, and I'm going to encourage you to watch it twice. If you don't have good techniques for eliciting requirements from your stakeholders, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to miss some requirements, you'll capture other requirements incorrectly, etc. In this section of the course, I'm going to describe one method of gathering requirements in a one-on-one setting where it's just you and your stakeholder. And then we'll move on to a method for group elicitation of requirements when it's you, and preferably some other team members, gathering requirements from a whole group of stakeholders. Before we get into the methods, though, let's talk about a couple challenges that you need to overcome. First, we need to understand and accept that communication, whether it's spoken, written, or graphic, whatever, it's all inherently imprecise. If your stakeholder makes a statement, there is a fair chance that you will misunderstand it. Similarly, if you make a statement, there is a good chance, or maybe even a higher chance, that your stakeholder will misunderstand it. You may have run into this before in the workplace or in your personal life, and it's especially a challenge for the business analyst. Another challenge is that people often don't know what they need until they see it. They probably understand they have a problem or issue or challenge, but they might not see a solution to it, or they might not even think there is a solution. I remember when the iPad was first released, they seemed like a pain. Why on earth would I want to spend a lot of money to get something that is too big to be a phone and too small to do any worthwhile computing? And then I actually got one, and then I decided and figured out that I really couldn't live without it. I had a need that I didn't realize I had. Similarly, you need to understand that people, including yourself, by the way, often don't have a good understanding of their problems. And it's your job as the business analyst to collectively help them come to an understanding. Each BA really needs to be an amateur psychologist. You need to analyze what people say. You need to look for people's motivations. You need to know how people learn things. You need to analyze people's communication styles. You need to read their body language. I wish that I had more than 7 minutes to cover this stuff, actually, but we'll try to power through it. I will mention, and this is a sales pitch, by the way, that Seventh Morning may be delivering a course on eliciting requirements from stakeholders, and it may be released later this year, and you might want to check it out. Stay tuned to our accounts on Facebook and or Twitter for more information. Okay, let's tackle one-on-one interviewing. All right, a large part of your requirements gathering is going to be one-on-one, and there are a lot of different formats for us. You can do it over the phone. You can go to the person's office, really whatever works for you. One of my favorite ways of gathering requirements was going out for coffee and taking my aforementioned iPad along to gather notes. I'll recommend that you start out with face-to-face interviews whenever possible, and then move on to other methods once you feel a bit more comfortable. I have a process for interviewing, and that's what I'm going to give you now. With time, you'll probably develop your own process, and then you'll continue refining that process for a long time, probably the remainder of your career. The first chunk of work in interviewing is preparing for the interview. And there's a good amount to do here. Preparation is important because your interviewees can tell when you're not prepared, and that's a really bad impression to give. The first step is finding the right stakeholders to interview. I always start with the sponsor of the project and then move on to the other key stakeholders. After deciding who to interview, define at a high level, maybe just a few bullet points, what you want to get out of the meeting. This can be as simple as initial meeting to learn their rationale and goals for the project, something like that. You can also come up with an outline of specific points you want to cover. If you do this, it usually saves time later and keeps you on track during the meeting. After that, I set up the meetings on their calendars. Usually just a quick meeting invite suffices. If you haven't already met the person, it's good to introduce yourself first as the BA for the project, and then propose the time and place to meet. and then mention your goal or goals for the interview in the invite. That shows, first of all, that you're goal oriented, and that's a good thing career wise for you to show your stakeholders. The ideal setting for an interview is somewhere convenient for your stakeholder that you won't be interrupted. It's a good idea to avoid the person's office so you don't get interrupted by their phone ringing and email inbox alerts and other people dropping by to chat. A conference room can work, or even a local coffee shop, and that was actually often my own favorite. And after that, you usually have a small window of time to learn a bit about the stakeholder. At a bare minimum, you should find out his or her full name with correct pronunciation, their job title, their responsibilities, and a general sense of the person. Are they easy to work with? What are their feelings about the project? That kind of thing. And this kind of intelligence should inform the way that you interview. During the interview, I usually start out with introductions, two different kinds. First, if I haven't met the person in the past, I introduce myself as you would with anyone. Be professional, be pleasant, be positive, that kind of thing. But the second introduction is just as important. Recap the goal or the purpose of the meeting. This helps you both to focus on the immediate work at hand. And then the actual interviewing starts. I usually start out at a high level and ask them what the project is about in their own words. Next, I might ask them about their goals for the project or their product. This helps to give us background information, but it's also going to be providing some of the business requirements if we pay attention and listen for them. After these two questions, I probably ask them to go into more detail about their goals. I really try to understand how they think and what they want. Remember, this interview is about them, not about you and me. I always want the interviewee to be doing the majority of the talking, at least 80%. For that reason, I try to ask open-ended questions. In other words, questions that are answered with essays rather than a word or two. Probably the most valuable advice I'll give you is this. If you don't understand something, say so. Ask them to explain. If you think you understand what they say, but aren't 100% sure, recap what you understand and then ask them to confirm it or correct what you say. This is really important. I can't tell you how many hundreds of times, and I'm not exaggerating, where I've said, oh, okay, well, let me see if I have this straight. So the process is A, B, C. And then the person turns around and says, no, it's actually C, B, then A. It's a very common thing. Generally, the interview goes on until the time is up, or the person has to leave, or you decide you have enough information to work with. But at the end, do this. Always thank the person you've interviewed. Remember that they're helping you do your work by giving you time and information and energy and attention. And after thanking them, I usually ask a magic question. And this is actually adapted from the world of sales. The question is, who else do I need to talk to? Half the time, they won't mention anyone, and the other half, they'll give you a whole list of people. And that's pretty much the interview meeting itself. After the interview, I usually make a point of writing up my notes in crisp and clear text. And after doing that, I email the notes to the stakeholder I interviewed. I ask them to take a quick look and correct me if I've either misstated something or missed any key points from the discussion. This is a good way of just verifying the requirements that we've captured so far and double-checking that you haven't missed anything important. And of course, I take one final opportunity to thank them for their time and their help. It sure does sound like a lot of work, and yeah, interviewing can be difficult and a little nerve-wracking at the beginning. Don't worry about it too much, though. It gets easier after you do it a few times, and if you keep working at it, you'll keep getting better and better.